"We're pinned down," Seals whispered. Then the female sniper walked out with her rifle. The canyon shook beneath the weight of gunfire. Dust drifted like ash from a burning sky. SEAL Team 7 clung to the rocks, their breaths shallow, their hope thinner than the desert air. And just when the last trace of courage began to fade, someone whispered, "She's coming." The first explosion wasn't the loudest. It was the one that stole the air from the men's lungs, replacing it with a silence that tasted like fear. Lieutenant James Rowan pressed his cheek against the rough stone, feeling grit scrape his skin. Every breath was a negotiation with the desert. Every second, a borrowed one. They had come for a simple extract, a local informant who claimed to hold keys to a dangerous weapons route. But the valley betrayed them. Or someone else did. The canyon walls rose like prison bars, and everything about the setup felt too clean, too convenient, too quiet, until it wasn't. "Contact right," Petty Officer Blake Hollis yelled, ducking as a burst of rounds shattered the rock above his head. Chips of stone rained down like broken teeth. Rowan counted, 8 men. 3 already hit, 2 bleeding heavily. Their medic pushed torn fabric into a wound he couldn't see enough to treat properly. Every sound was swallowed by the sandstorm rolling in, roaring winds that made shapes out of shadows. The world shrank to the size of the boulder Rowan hid behind. The team wasn't fighting the enemy anymore. They were fighting the clock. And losing. Rowan risked a glance over the ridge. Muzzle flashes dotted the canyon higher up, elevated positions, perfect visibility. The enemy had planned this well. Too well. They weren't firing to pin them down. They were firing to erase them. "Air support is grounded," Sergeant Cooper muttered, checking his jammed radio for the 10th useless time. "Storm's eating everything. We're blind." The wind whipped around them, carrying sand that stung their skin and blurred their vision. Rowan wiped his eyes, but the world stayed smeared, just shifting shapes, shadows that could be friend or foe. His heart thudded hard enough to echo in his ears. Blake, the youngest, barely 24, curled tighter behind cover. "Lieutenant, we don't walk out of this." His voice cracked, not from fear, but from something heavier, realization. Rowan put a hand on the kid's shoulder. "We hold. That's what we do." But his eyes betrayed him. Distant, calculating, searching for miracle odds that weren't there. Another volley slammed into the canyon, closer this time. Too close. Their last line of retreat had collapsed under enemy fire minutes ago. Ammunition was running thin. Blood was running fast. The desert was patient. The enemy was not. And Rowan knew what the silence between shots meant. They were being outflanked. Hollis crawled over, dragging a spare mag. "Lieutenant, someone fed them our route." His voice was low, trembling with anger more than fear. Nobody sets up an ambush like this without inside intel. Rowan knew. Everyone knew. But naming betrayal didn't buy survival. Across the chaos, their comms tech, Pierce, huddled over shattered equipment. Wires hung like exposed veins. His hands shook. Whether from pain or exhaustion, no one could tell. "I can't get through. They're using signal dampeners. Maybe drones. Maybe ground jammers. Either way, we're ghosted." Thunder rolled, not from the sky but from a heavy machine gun opening up. Rowan ducked. Hollis flinched. Sand erupted around them in violent sprays. Another inch and someone would be dead. Then, out of nowhere, a shot pierced the storm. Not the enemy's. A single crack. Clean. Sharp. Focused. One of the machine gun nests went silent. Not damaged. Not suppressed. Neutralized. Pierce lifted his head. Did one of ours fire?" "No one's up there," Hollis whispered. Another shot. Another enemy fell. Cooper froze, eyes narrowing. "No way. No damn way." Rowan frowned. "You know something?" Cooper swallowed, voice suddenly unsteady. "I know only one sniper who shoots through a sandstorm." The others leaned in. "You're telling me," Blake said, hope flickering dangerously, "that she's real?" Cooper nodded once. "They called her Ghostwind." Long before the desert swallowed their chances, Ghostwind had been a story passed between soldiers. Not in bars, not in briefings, but in those quiet hours before dawn when truth feels heavier. Her real name had once been Captain Mara Levant. Thought she was killed in Kost province, Hollis muttered, peeking over cover. Friendly fire, right? Rowan shook his head. No. Official reports said, missing in action. Cooper exhaled, eyes fixed on the ridgeline. Unofficially? They stopped looking after 36 hours. The way he said it made Blake shiver. Ghostwind had been a sniper unmatched, patient, unshakable, lethal from distances others wouldn't dare to attempt. But what made her legend wasn't her accuracy. It was her heart. She never fired unless her shot saved someone else. Never took glory. Never broke. Until the day she broke completely. Cooper continued, her whole team. The moment Mara's voice faded, reality slammed back into the canyon. Automatic fire ripped across the ridge, forcing Rowan and his men to flatten themselves against the scorching rock. Hollis cursed under his breath. Cooper reloaded with trembling hands. Blake whispered something like a prayer. Rowan forced himself to breathe steady. All right. Ghostwind says 6 minutes. We hold 6 minutes. Pierce shook his head. Sir, they're repositioning. They're tightening the circle. He wasn't wrong. Even through the sandstorm, Rowan could see silhouettes shifting in the haze, enemy fighters closing in, confident, deliberate. A mortar shell screamed overhead, landing 30 meters away. The blast lifted dust and stone into the air, raining down on them like a cruel reminder of how little time they had left. Blake leaned closer. Lieutenant, what if she doesn't make it in time? Rowan looked at his men. Dusty, bruised, exhausted, each of them clinging to the belief that survival was still possible. He couldn't tell Blake that he didn't know. Couldn't tell him the truth pressing on his own ribs. Instead, he said, she'll make it. Then, faint but unmistakable, another shot tore through the storm. A scream echoed from the ridge. Rowan didn't know who Mara had hit, but he knew she was getting closer. 5 minutes, maybe less, and death was racing her. A kilometer away, Mara Levant bounded across uneven stone, her breath burning in the cold wind. The sandstorm clawed at her jacket, whipping grit into her eyes, but she never slowed. Her rifle, the long, battered M2010 she had rebuilt herself, stayed steady in her hands as if it were part of her. Her legs ached. Her ribs throbbed with every step. She'd eaten nothing in 20 hours, slept in 40. But none of that mattered, not when 8 men in the canyon were about to face the same fate as her old unit. She would not bury another team. Not today. Her mind flashed back to Nightfall, the mission that had gutted her life. The ambush she hadn't seen in time. The screams over the radio. The last look from her captain before the explosion swallowed him. She had survived that night by inches. By luck. By punishment. And for 18 months, she had convinced herself solitude was redemption. But hearing Rowan's voice, raw, strained, fighting to keep his men alive, hit something deep in her chest. She wasn't running toward a battlefield. She was running toward a chance to make peace with the ghosts that followed her into every dream. She pressed on. The storm could try to stop her. She had weathered worse. The desert blurred around her as she ducked into the shadow of a broken ridge. The wind howled. The storm thickened. She could barely see 10 meters ahead, but she didn't need her eyes. She needed her memory. Nightfall had taught her how to hear death coming. Footsteps faint, cautious, 2 o'clock. Breathing, fast, nervous, 3 meters beyond. She swung her rifle into position, exhaling slowly. The storm tried to push her off balance, but she steadied herself with the calm of someone who had faced loss and chosen to keep walking anyway. 1 clean shot, straight through the haze. A shape dropped. 2 more footsteps scrambled behind a boulder. She repositioned, shifting her weight, counting seconds the way Hawk once drilled into her. Asterisk, don't chase panic. Chase patterns. Asterisk. The second enemy peeked out. Another shot. Another silhouette fell. She moved again, not staying in one spot longer than breath allowed. Her hands knew the weapon. Her feet knew the terrain. Her heart knew the cost of slowing down. As she advanced, the desert began to smell like nightfall again. Burnt metal, hot sand, fear cracking under pressure. She tightened her grip. She wasn't here to repeat that night. She was here to rewrite it. In the canyon, Rowan felt the ground tremble under the mortar team's next attempt. A blast knocked Hollis backward, peppering his vest with pebbles. Cooper dragged him behind cover. "We're getting overrun," Cooper snapped. "Where the hell is she?" Rowan didn't know, but he also knew Mara Levant was not the kind to make promises she couldn't deliver. If she said she was coming, then she was tearing her way through the storm to reach them. Still, doubt gnawed at him. The enemy fighters were closer now, shadows appearing between wind gusts, silhouettes shifting along the canyon's teeth. The storm masked their numbers, but Rowan could feel the pressure of being hunted. Pierce managed a spark of a signal. "Sir, it's weak, but maybe you can get a message out." Rowan grabbed the battered radio, thumb trembling over the button. "Mara, if you hear me, don't rush it. Just be smart." Static swallowed his words. He tried again. "We're holding as long as we can." He closed his eye. Mara slid down the ridge like a shadow carried by gravity. The storm roared around her, tugging at her jacket, clawing at her boots, but she kept moving, controlled, deliberate. Every step was a promise she had made to herself years ago. Never again. Never lose another team. Below, Rowan fired short, sharp bursts as the enemy continued to advance. "They're pushing left," he yelled. Cooper and Blake shifted to cover, faces streaked with dust and blood. Hollis pressed his hand against a wound leaking too fast. Rowan peeked again. Nothing but storm. Nothing but death closing in. Then a figure emerged, walking straight into enemy fire. Slim. Steady. Rifle low, steps exact. The hood of a sand-colored scarf whipped behind her like a tail of smoke. Blake whispered, "No way, she's insane." Cooper shook his head. "No. She's clearing a lane." Enemy fighters noticed her, turning their weapons toward the lone silhouette. Mara raised her rifle, firing 3 times. 3 silhouettes dropped. She didn't stop. She didn't hesitate. Her presence cut through the storm like a blade. Rowan exhaled shakily, half relief, half disbelief. "Mara," he whispered, "you really came back." But Mara didn't look at them. Not yet. She looked at the men she was about to save. And the men she was about to kill. The storm shifted again, the wind howling in a low, mournful tone as Mara reached their position. Rowan saw the exhaustion lining her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the cracks on her lips, signs of someone who had lived on the edge for far too long. But her eyes? They were steady, alive, focused. "Positions?" she asked, voice calm despite the chaos. Rowan pointed. 2 on the left. 4 pushing center. More behind them. Mara lifted her rifle. "Then let's finish this." She knelt beside Blake, who stared at her like she wasn't real. "You're Ghostwind," he breathed. She didn't answer. Instead, she reloaded her magazine, the metallic click drowned by thunder from the storm. Then the enemy surged. Rowan fired until the barrel burned hot. Cooper laid down suppressive fire. Blake, shaking but determined, held the line. Mara moved like she was dancing with the storm, each shot deliberate, every shift efficient. She didn't waste bullets. She didn't miss. A grenade rolled toward them. Hollis screamed, "Grenade!" Mara dove, sweeping it back toward the attackers with a gloved hand. The explosion rocked the canyon, taking 2 hostiles with it. Rowan stared at her, equal parts awe and heartbreak. "You shouldn't be here," he said. She didn't look at him. "I should have been here years ago." The enemy momentum broke. Not instantly, but like a line fraying under strain. They pulled back, regrouping, firing wildly instead of deliberately. The storm was on Rowan's side now, whipping grit into the attacker's eyes. Mara ducked beside him, reloading her final magazine. Her hands trembled for the first time. You're hurt, Rowan said. It's old, she replied. Everything's old. He didn't know whether she meant the wound or the past. Rowan leaned closer. What happened to you, Mara? Her eyes flickered. Pain, grief, the kind of memory that carves you hollow. Nightfall happened, and I lived when they didn't. She swallowed hard, her voice thinning. I walked away because I thought, maybe I wasn't meant to save anyone anymore. Rowan felt a lump in his throat. Then why come back now? Her answer was quiet. Fragile. True. Because your voices sounded like theirs. And I couldn't lose another family. Before Rowan could speak, gunfire erupted again, closer this time. The enemy had one last coordinated push left. Mara lifted her rifle, but her hands shook harder. The wound under her ribs was bleeding again, staining her shirt. Rowan placed his hand over hers. You're not alone this time. Her breath caught. Then she steadied her rifle. And they fought together. Their ammunition dwindled fast. Cooper's last magazine clicked empty. Blake had 2 rounds left. Hollis had none. Rowan checked his, 3 bullet. Mara held only 1. 1 shot. Blake gasped. How do we fight with 1 damn shot? Mara scanned the storm. We don't fight everything. We fight the right thing. Through the haze, she saw movement, a larger silhouette climbing onto a vantage point. Not a regular fighter. Someone carrying a radio pack. A commander. The one coordinating the entire ambush. Rowan saw it too. If we take him out, the rest fall apart, Mara finished. She lifted her rifle, swaying slightly. Rowan steadied her shoulder.